what is it, why you need it, and what to do with it, and how to create it, and all the other questions that you have, you will get answers from Christina. Of course, like on every other meetup that you are having, you are welcome to ask your questions whenever you have them, whenever you're ready. You don't have to wait until the lecture is over. So don't be shy, just raise your hand and ask anything you wish to know. I will just say that Christina is really good with content marketing, and you have a lot to learn from her, and some of you will meet her again. So pay close attention to the things she's saying, and I give the floor to Christina, and I will ask her to tell us more about herself.
Okay, thank you. You can hear me? Yeah, it's working. It's working really well. It's really loud. I think everyone, even on the street, can hear me now. So, okay, I'm gonna switch to this side. Just very quickly before I tell you a little bit about myself, I just want to tell you very briefly what we're going to do. I want to tell you a little bit about why it is so important these days to actually have the right content mix. In that context, we will talk about customer journey as well a little bit. We will talk about content ideas and timing, mix of channels, where to post what and when. And then, of course, the content plan. So, yeah. About me, the reason why I'm here today, well, I started off my career as a journalist back in Austria. I'm originally from Linz, but I used to work as a print journalist in Vienna for about 9 years, until I realized that the bubble of journalism is really, really small, and every day was happening the same thing. So I got a little bit bored with it, and I decided to actually change to online. That was already ages ago, in 2005, and I changed to content management and content marketing. For that, I was working with big brands like Red Bull and Nivea. I was also working in London for about 8 years, where I learned a lot about brand awareness and social media. After 8 years, I decided to come back and actually use my skills and my experience for a slightly different purpose, because so far I had mainly used it for big cooperatives, and I realized that I'm mainly helping rich people to spend more money, or big companies to make even more money, and that was not very satisfying for me, so I decided to actually use my skills where it's, in my opinion, more needed, and since then I have a focus actually on impact communication and work a lot with organizations and social businesses. And in that sense, I was invited as well to come here with a program. It's called Entrepreneur in Residence, and I'm here now all together for 6 months working with organizations. And in that frame, I was invited to come here as well today, and that's pretty much where I'm standing in front of you right here. Okay, before we start, I just want to get a very rough idea about your level of know-how, what we're going to talk about it. So if you just can raise your hand so I get an idea. Who of you guys has worked with content marketing so far? Okay, there are a few. Who has ever worked with a content plan, or who had a content plan in place? Yes, that's brilliant. You don't count with that. Who has worked with a content journey, or who knows the term content journey or customer journey? Actually, sorry, that's wrong. That should say customer journey. Customer journey, anyone? Okay, good. I love talking about that. So, and who's working with social media? Yeah, here we go. We all do, don't we? Okay, thank you. Right. I start from the very scratch here. Some of the things might be very logical. If something is not logical, I also want to invite you to ask questions at any time. Yeah, we will have the time. A content mix is basically the strategic combination of timing, formats, content, and channels. You see here on the right an old content plan of mine. I don't want you to read it in detail. I just want you to see that as an example for a content mix. So you have up there different channels, and on the timeline on the left, you have actually, you see what content will be published when on different channels. So that's a content mix. And this content mix should be as strategic as possible and best possible for your target audience. Yeah? Why is it so important? Well, I will tell you now things you probably know, but that's really the reason why a content mix is so important. Simply because of the world we're living in. We're living in a digital world, like us, where we have last year 60 seconds, this happened to us. I mean, obviously we were not opposed to all of it, but there's an awful lot, uncontrollable amount of messages coming towards our direction, and in order for you as a professional, as a business or whatever, to get the attention from the people you want the attention from, you really need to make sure that you get the right message out at the right time. That's why it's so important to not just post, for example, on social media or write on the website what you think is crucial or important, but to really understand what does the person I need to buy, for example, my product, what information does this person need, at what time, and on what channel. And in order to arrange that, to actually get the attention and then get your target audience on a journey with you, you need a content mix. Does it make sense so far?
Yes.
Apparently, customers are exposed to 10,000 brand messages a day, and we switch screens to up to 21 times a day. So this is from UK, so I don't know if people are as crazy everywhere, but we get the idea, right? When it's pretty much everywhere the same. So I mentioned it already a little bit. In order to actually not confuse your target audience, but actually get their attention, customers today in the digital world need a structure, they need consistency, and they need the right content at the right time. I said this. In order to actually not only listen to you, but ideally also are able to build up trust to your brand or to your product. And that's what we're basically going to talk about today, and that's why we'll introduce models to you how you actually can find those content. Okay, so I'm going to start talking now about a customer journey, because it's very important in order for you to find the right content at the right time. A customer journey map is a visual that helps out to outline the story of your customer's experience. From the first interaction with your business, or the business you're working for, to a long-term relationship, loyalty, ideally. So you see the picture here. It's pretty simple. From the first time a potential customer gets in touch with your business to the very last point, which is hopefully a long-term relationship. And it's a long journey, yeah? You see here different phases: awareness, interest, consideration, purchase, retention, and loyalty, advocacy. We all go through those phases when we decide to actually purchase something, spend money on something, or invest in something. I will talk about that a little bit later as well. But at this point, I just want to make sure that you understand what is a customer journey. It's the journey your potential customer goes through in order to buy from you and to become your permanent or long-term client. Make sense?
Yes.
As a basic thing? Good. Now, customer journey and content marketing. So there's a customer, just very shortly, there's a customer journey map in marketing, where there's an awful lot of agencies out there that do that as a full-time job. So you can spend a lot of money and a lot of time on a customer journey map, yeah? That's not what I'm talking about today. I want to talk about how you can apply this customer journey for your content marketing and your content mix. So, as we've seen, there's a journey, right? Before we start anything, we need a goal. Because at the end of the journey, there's a goal. Most likely the goal is that you want someone to buy a product. Or goals can be something else as well. It can be if you want to raise awareness about something, maybe a campaign or maybe a conference. You know, maybe you want to build a community, maybe you want to increase your followers on social medias. These are all goals, but in order to understand what journey the customer will have to take, you need to know where you want him to go, okay? And that's your target. So, most importantly, even when you think about the content mix, think about what you actually want to achieve and where you actually want the customer to take to, yeah? There is a graphic, SMART Goals. I don't know if anyone of you have heard it. It comes from project management, and it basically helps. It's one of many models, but I personally like it because it helps to define a goal very specifically and realistically. So I have a I made it up, yeah, I don't know if it makes sense, but there is an example for a goal that would be defined according to this model in a correct way. And that would be, for example, by the 31st of August, this year, we have generated online and offline 100 registrations for the event Entrepreneurship in Serbia, yeah, taking place on the 2nd September here at Business Incubator in Novi Sad. So, just very quickly, why this is so complex, the goal. It needs to be specific according to this model, and it is pretty specific because we say we want 100 registration, yeah. It needs to be meaningful and can also stand for measurable. It needs to be measurable. Again, if we have 100 registration, online and offline, I can measure if I have achieved this goal, yeah. Action-oriented. There always needs to be an action, so if people have to register, there's an action involved. Yeah? Realistic. Realistic means be real about what you can achieve. Here I put 100 and not 10,000 to just, overdo it. Just try to be realistic, otherwise it's a waste of resources and a waste of time. And timely. Always put the time frame. Yeah? So, I strongly recommend everyone, even if you do it yourself, if you work in the field or not, I really strongly recommend to think about this as detailed as possible. Yeah, even if it might seem a bit complicated at this point, but it will help you later on to find the right content. So the second thing, we know what we want to achieve. The second thing is we need to know who the customer is. We create the journey for, because otherwise there's no journey with no customer. So step number 2 is actually to find out as much information as possible about the customer itself. So everyone as a target group doesn't work. Not anymore. I mean, probably has never worked, but especially now in the digital world, doesn't work anymore. So try to find out as much as you can about a customer. First, do the basics. Do like age, gender, demographics, job, salary, but also go a little bit in depth. So try to understand how this customer behaves. What is the customer worried about? When is the customer ready to spend time to actually search for a product or is ready to buy? Look at his hobbies, and very important, also look at the social media preferences, because it will tell you where you actually find the customer. I mean, it says social media, but also think offline. You will, for example, an older person you will not find on Instagram, but maybe rather on an event. Whilst if you target, for example, a young audience, like students, you will rather probably find them on Instagram. So this is very important for the customer journey as well, to understand how do they function, because only then you can draw a map how they will travel in connection with your business. I personally do workshops, long workshops actually, only about this. Yeah. Today we don't have the time to get into this, but my recommendation would be just Google target persona if you haven't done yet, and there will be a lot of really good material come up. You will get kind of a questionnaire, and you can fill in questions and content about the target persona. And if you do that, you will have the answers of what content you will need. Because when you know what the customer, the target persona needs from you, you know what to tell them. Good, that's why it's so important. If I work with a client on a content strategy, this is where I spend most time, even they're annoyed with me, but I really do, because that's where we get all the answers from. You will see in a bit. I think you guys will have access to this presentation. Later on, you will find a couple of those slides in the presentations where I have a simplified process of these models I introduced to you now. So for example, if you want to try to find out a little bit about your target persona, you could here then just answer those questions for yourself. So think about, and we said now as an example for the goal, we said there's a conference end of August. Who could be my persona? Who could I talk to that they register with me online and offline, and I just put in randomly co-founders? Could be a good persona, and maybe freelancers. Yeah, but it's up to you. Obviously, whatever you want to do, you think about who do I want to buy my product? Who do I want to come to my conference? Put them in there and answer those questions. Yeah, I'm not going to go into further detail. But this way you get some basic information you can work on then in order to also find your contact list. Here is a very quickly, there's an example of a customer journey, a very professional one. It's a bit older, but I wanted to show it to you very briefly how it looks like when it's very much in detail. So also here you have a persona. It's an example for online travel agency, so someone who wants actually someone to book a holiday with them, okay? So they have a persona, they have a goal, pretty much the same as we just talked about, right? And then they map out the stages of the journey. So it starts with desire for travel, explore options, select vacation, and so on, but they go even deeper. They write down the customer needs and activities, and the expectations from the online agency from the persona. So red, you see, is when they are worried. So for example, if they decide, okay, I want a holiday, they might feel very happy. When they start looking and they see the prices, they might feel totally frustrated. That is also very crucial in content marketing, because you will know how to talk to them. That's why it's important. Because if someone is totally frustrated about money and you come as the happiest person ever, you might not meet, right? And you want them to actually listen to you what you say. So, and there's even an emotional state journey for the customer. And at the bottom, they list the potential opportunities for improvement. So, but let's leave that for now. That's an example for a customer journey. What I want to do is one model now for already also thinking of content mix. I want to go through a very simplified version of a customer journey when it comes to you and your website. Okay, so because it's also very important how the customer travels from the first touch point in order to get them to your goal. So, the first contact, where do they hear from you, or where do you send them? So the first contact, think about it, where do you meet them? Is it, I mentioned it before, is it social media? Do they read emails? Maybe you need to do email marketing? Do you meet them at event? Really think where you realistically can make a first contact. And you should have the answer by now if you have spent time to actually define your target persona, as we talked before, because there it will either say Instagram, email, or whatever. Yeah? So where do you meet them? And where do you send them as a first stop, as a first station? Do you send them to the homepage? Do you send them right away to the registration form? Just if they see something, for example, on Facebook from you, will they be ready to register right away? Probably not. They probably need some information. So think about it, what information will they need and where to send them. So for example, as a step one, you could send them to the homepage of your website. Yeah? Or if you think they are ready, they don't need some kind of intro, send them directly to the program of your conference. So really think about logical, where would you like to send them? If you think they're ready to register, after step 1, send them to the registration to your goal you have defined. If you think they need another step in between, send them somewhere else. So another example would be, for example, mothers get very sensitive when they buy stuff for the kids, right? They always want it to be the best product, and they want to know if it's the right quality and so on. So very often with parent shopping, it's very often also about building up trust, so that they need something to confirm that these are the right people for their kids, where they can buy from for their kids. So for example, you would send them to maybe About Us, so that they see about the team and they find out about who is behind this, and they can build up some trust. So these are some random examples, but just so you understand the way of thinking, yeah? And then, when they're ready, send them to register or to buy or to order. We all need this, you know? We all need the right answers at the right time, because we have so many messages. And if someone doesn't tell me what I need at the time, I'm not going to waste my time for this, you know, because there's already 3,000 other messages coming my way. That's why it's important. Again, there's another slide like this where, if you want, I invite you later, if you get the presentation, where you can play it through. Where's the first contact? What is station 1? Maybe there's a station 2. What's the goal? And follow-up steps, if needed. There is one term, CTA, and I have to scroll up now, and I have to look where I should go next. Make it as easy as possible by showing them the next step where you want to take them. Okay? This is already kind of a content mix. That's how you mix content together in order to send them to your goal. Yeah? Did that make sense so far? Good. That's one way to do it. There's another way to do it as well, which I work with a lot and which I would like to introduce to you as well. It's called the buying cycle, or the marketing funnel. It's used widely in all kinds of marketings. I like to use it for content marketing as well. Let's focus on the right side here. Let's ignore the left side for now. We focus on consumer thoughts, okay? So I mentioned that before, we saw it briefly in the customer journey. So when we decide to buy something, we all go through the same process, consciously or unconsciously, but we really do. These are the marketing defined stages we go through. The first stage is awareness of need, where someone, if I don't know that something is out there, someone needs to tell me that I need it, yeah? So I take a very simple example, let's say electric cars. Let's go a few years back, where there were not so many electric cars around, and it was a big new thing, okay? So many people didn't know about electric cars, and if I, for example, produced electric cars, not very realistic, but anyways, I need to tell people that there is something out there, like an electric car, and that they might need it for whatever reason, you know, to save CO2 emission, to actually contribute to save CO2 emission, to explain the bigger picture, but I need to tell them that it's out there. Because I cannot tell them to spend 300,000 euros on an electric car if I haven't told them why and that it's out there, okay? So then I would, for example, produce content, copy for that phase. So awareness of need, where I tell them, hopefully in a storytelling way, that there is something like an electronic car. So I've told them there's an electronic car. Then we go to the next stage, which is consideration and research. So they know there's something like that out there, but they still think, yeah, but do I need this? I don't know. Why should it be something for me? So they consider. Again, this is where you can produce content to to help them, to tell them, yes, this is for you, and why. For that, and I'm starting to repeat myself, but that's a good thing in that case, because you know from your target persona definition why it's good for them, because you know how they feel, you know how they feel about maybe contributing to an environmental improvement and so on. You know your target persona, so you think, you look at it and you think, why is it for them? Yeah? If you got them and they say, okay, they're right. They told me the right thing, they're right, I need an electronic car. We move down again one stage, and here it's all about analysis and comparison. Here it's about selling. Yeah? Why should I buy a Tesla? Should I buy a BMW? Should I buy a Mercedes? I mean, a few years back they were not there, but just to play through this example, here you sell. Why they should choose you and not any of your competitors. Yeah? Next phase hopefully is the purchase and loyalty to keep them. So, why is it important in content marketing and why is it important for your content mix? I would invite you, if you're interested in using this model, to look in what of those stages your target persona is. Because it could be that someone already knows about what you're selling or what you're trying to sell, and you only have to start here. You know, you need content for selling. Maybe they're not sure if they should buy, then you need to start here to produce content. So this model can be very helpful actually in order to understand where you find the content you need to start producing and putting out there. Make sense so far?
Yes.
On the left side, there is the formats. So in a different phase, we are on different formats. For me, personally, this is not written in stone at all. It really, really depends a lot on the target persona. Remember, where do we meet them, where they hang out. But it's worth thinking about as well how to actually, how to kind of, how should I say, how to unlock the interest, how to actually increase the intensity of interest in your brand. Good. I mean, an email might be much more personal than a Facebook post. That's basically what they are trying to tell you. Yeah? So, and the purchase down here, obviously, is your goal you have defined in the beginning. So that's how it comes together. Same thing, a slide where you actually can enter for your own personas if you're interested. You have the target personas up there, co-founder, freelancer, what stage is the persona in, what information does the persona need at this stage, what are the next stages, what could be interested for them in the next stages, and that's how you lead them to the goal. Of course, you know, everyone is a little bit different, and everyone might be, not everyone is in the same stage. But that's how marketing and content marketing works, that you try to define your typical target personas that help you to reach your goal, and for them you produce content. So don't be scared to maybe put out content that might not apply all the time to one persona. That's totally fine, but it really, in order to produce the right content, it really helps you to understand what information they need from you. Content, ideas, and timing. So we talked a lot about target persona now, we talked a lot about where we find them and what content they need. Now to find the actual content ideas, I would suggest to actually create the right mix. Write down with all the information you collected and you gathered so far, write down what they need, what they're interested in, and put it in a timeline. Think about it when you should tell them the content you just defined. For example, if there's a countdown for a conference, there's a very clear timeline. But even for other things, think about it, when does it make sense think of actual events out there, think of, I don't know, Easter, Christmas, New Year's, think of all the kind of stuff, how does it make sense? And don't do it randomly, because as we heard in the beginning, we need consistency in structures, we need a journey, we need someone to actually take us on a journey, and this is your decision and not your customer's decision. And also put the channels which you hopefully know from your target persona definition. And do it for all personas. So just maybe quickly as well, one persona in general is very little. Yeah, I mean it's possible, but it's totally fine to have 2 or 3 personas. I had a client who had 6 personas for one content plan. I mean it gets a bit hectic then, but then you prioritize. Yeah, but really it's totally okay to target more than one persona. Okay, so I will talk a bit briefly as well about storytelling. You might have heard about storytelling. It's a big thing. So if we have all the content, it's also important to know how to tell the content. So very briefly, what is a good story? A good story is authentic, is creative, creates an emotion, creates a personal connection, inspires an action, takes an audience on a journey with a brand. I've mentioned it a few times, very important, and increases revenue, believe it or not. So pretty easy, huh? Okay.
I will put to take a picture, the previous one. Just to have a picture, please. Thank you.
Done? I will play a video. Oh, the microphone is not a bit. I hope it works.
We not only make great sparkling water, but we also help save the planet from plastic waste. With one reusable bottle, we can save a family up to 3,000 disposable bottles every year. Now that's a revolution. We're rainmakers. She's a rainmaker. I'm an accountant. He's a rainmaker. I'm a lawyer. We've just been sued by Coke. Again. We're growing so fast, we're looking for new talent. People who can move. The first thing a soda streamer needs is a creative mind. You want to see creativity? Look at Milos. Milos figured out a creative way to carry all these soda stream machines. Yes. The second thing you need when you work at SodaStream is a sense of urgency. When you work here, you need to be able to move fast and always stay alert. The most important thing we're looking for is business courage. Here at SodaStream, we love taking risks. And yeah, sometimes we'll fail.
Do not fail.
We embrace failure.
Yes.
We're a family of 3,000 people from all religions and nationalities working side by side in peace and coexistence. So if you're creative, if you're fast, brave, and optimistic, you belong with us here at SodaStream, the #1 sparkling water brand in the world. So come join the revolution and let's make the world a better place. Milos, nice job today.
Dan, I think I deserve a raise.
Mr. Mountain, he wants a raise.
Yes.
That's it. Did anyone know that? No? I think the brand is also not so known here. SodaStream is a UK-based brand, I believe, and in where I come from, everyone has it by now. You know, everyone has their SodaStream bottles at home, and I mean, mainly not to carry a lot of bottles every second day, but also to contribute, of course, to the reduction of plastic waste. Anyways, I wanted to show you that because I think it's a great story, a great example for storytelling. Why? Maybe, let's go back again. It's quite authentic. Why is it authentic? Because the guy actually who's walking through and talking is the real CEO of SodaStream. Yeah? So that makes it authentic. It's creative because it's quite surprising. It's not like straightforward, we're producing SodaStream and so on. It creates an emotion because it builds up. Yeah, the emotion is not like that. I feel like in many other, maybe Christmas efforts on storytelling, that I feel emotional about it, I want to cry, but it's funny. It's, I mean, everyone's choice if they like the humor of it or not, but it's kind of creative and funny and creates an emotion. Creates a personal connection. I mean, this one so, but when he actually says, we're a big family, and we have staff members from 13 nations and every religion, it does create a personal connection, or at least there's the effort there to do that. He definitely takes us on a journey by walking through his business or video setting, and it inspires an action because you find these stories if they're right for you. The goal was clear for SodaStream, right? They want to build a community, and it's actually a bit of a hidden, not directly formulated call to action bias. Yeah, he just says join the community. He kind of creates a community for you, but the goal is clearly to sell more SodaStream. The purpose is also very clear. Their brand values, because they say we save plastic waste. Yeah, we have a clear purpose to reduce the plastic waste. And the target persona, it's very much between the lines, but that's also very good storytelling. Pretty much everyone who wants to join the community and actually bring soda water to their home rather than buying it and reducing waste. If you manage to do that for your own business or for the client you work for, if you look at the goal you have to find, if you look at the target persona you looked at, and the purpose, this is where you can find the right stories. So I'm aware that this is very generic, and I also do an extra workshop about storytelling, but again, today we don't have that much time, so very few tips for having typical stories, where you always can actually build stories around. If appropriate, your personal story. It's for every one of us, it's interesting where a business idea came from. What's the journey like? Why are you doing this? It's a lot about building up trust to a brand if I understand why. Where do they come from? So I understand that if you develop an app, it might be a little bit less interesting than if you have, like, for example, if you have an impactful business. Yeah. But still think of what could be interesting for your target persona, to why you're doing this, because it will help them to build up emotional connection to your brand. Always worth telling is stories about your USPs, your unique selling propositions, and your brand values. Simple unique selling propositions is what differs you from your competition, what makes you unique, why should we buy from you and not from any other competitors. Yeah. Always possible to buy to actually build stories around a product, service, and business from idea to development. Very popular always is also behind the scenes. How is something developed? How is something produced? Or when you travel. Yeah. Make yourself real to your audience out there and tell it in a story. And last but not least, always try to put a storyline or some kind of structure to it. So that can be in chapters, just chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, for example, in a video. It can be a countdown. If there's a conference, you can put a countdown storyline. Or as we have seen now with SodaStream, this guy is just walking one way. Yeah, and it is already a storyline. So there's no need to overthink that. You know, you don't need to be able to write books to be able to tell a story. It can be very simple because we want it simple as well. It should be simple to consume for us, for the customer as well. Same thing. Again, a sheet where you can put in your content, all your story, and the structure, the storyline. So, how do you set out with storytelling? A few things. Might be cheesy, but really, if you have a business on your own or if you work for a company, be you. There's so many, be authentic. There's so many messages out there that actually your personal you being authentic is one big point how you can stand out because no one else has the same story. Create a tone of voice or a brand voice. Be consistent in the way you talk to your customer. Think about how you want to sound. Yeah. Are you scientific? Are you entertaining? If I'm an online magazine, I probably want to sound inspiring or entertaining. When I'm writing for a university blog, I might be more scientific. So just make sure how you want to sound and how you want to be perceived by your customer or by the ones that watch your video. Yeah? Visual identity. Also, again, it's a lot about consistency. Be consistent. Use the same font. Use the brand colors you have defined. Your customers will thank you for that over time. We need consistency. While we talked about it enough already. Visuals tell a story. Do it much faster. Here's some old examples from our company. As you might have noticed, green is one of our brand colors, and we just try to put it in whatever we do. You know, this is a picture from the website, and we only highlighted 2 letters in the color. It's little tiny things, but it's really worth it over a longer period of time. Okay, another model. Very shortly, it's my baby. It's very close to my heart. It's not very common yet, but consider responsible communication if you want to stand out with storytelling or with your content mix. What is responsible communication? There's one model. Again, there's many out there. This is one. It's called Responsible Business Framework by an American consultant called Karen Sanford. And what she says, it's not enough to only look at your customer anymore to be successful. People out there, all across the world, become much more demanding. They're not buying only a product. They're buying a brand. They're buying a whole image of you. What do you stand for? Okay? So how do you actually run a business? You become more and more demanding when it comes to that. So what she says, it's not only the customer, it's also the co-creators you should talk about. So co-creators is your own team or your supply chain, for example. It's planet Earth. Do you harm the environment? If yes, what do you do about it? Do you help the environment? Talk about it. Community, the community, for example, where you produce a product. Do you care about this community and so on? And if there are investors or funders, also talk about that. So I'm not saying that every one of you needs to start to do this right now, but it is a tip to actually look out what stakeholder groups you influence and include them in your communication and in your content mix. Talk about who is your supply chain, introduce them, you know. Talk about how you see the topic of environment if it affects your business model, and it will help your content mix. You will stand out by it to actually look at this other stakeholder group as well, and it is where the trend is going, I can promise you that. So it might take a few more years, but it is in the coming. Also tell stories to your stakeholders, to your stakeholder group. Think what you tell them, and they will become your ambassadors. Yeah? Mix of channels. Yeah, well. Influencer marketing and email marketing, as you can see, is still very, very successful combined with social media. I don't want to go too much into detail because, again, I believe strongly that you find the answers in your target persona. What mix of channels you need. If you know where you find them, what they use, you will know what channels you should use. Social media in particular, same thing as before. And in this graphic you see as well, it's always the same question. Who is your audience? How can you reach them? And what are their goals? Just quickly, I mean, Facebook by now is, I think, at 2.2 billion. I think the latest trend showed that Facebook decreases, but they are so much ahead that Facebook will be around for a very long time. So we have to be aware of that. Some might be happy, I'm not, but okay. Instagram is booming, of course, is important. So if you look at it, if you get the presentation, just look at it. This is nicely done because it shows you what purpose it can help you and what are the downsides to it. Again, I'm repeating myself, the real answers you will find in your target personas because there's no point on putting content endlessly on Facebook if people are on LinkedIn. No point. Yeah? Make sure you have a good mix of formats. Use everything that is out there on social media. Again, it's the journey. Think of it as a journey of your customer, how you want to experience, how you want them to experience what you tell them. And don't forget them to lead them to your goal. Don't be annoying. One of the biggest risks on social media. I mean, but you know it from yourself. Think of yourself. When does it get annoying? Yeah. There's no rule how much you should post and stuff. It really depends on what you have to say and who's your target audience. And last but not least, we come back to the content plan. When you have all this information, I know I talked a lot, and it is a lot, but if you have all this information, you have kind of collected where to find your audience. You have kind of collected where are they and what content do they need from me. Think about it how it makes sense. Mix it nicely and put it in a content plan. Here very roughly, for the example, I put just the month on the left and the channels you have decided to do here and then put it in. I will show you the example now from the very beginning, hopefully. I hope it opens. This is an old content plan of mine for a conference in 2017, happening in Skopje, Macedonia. And what you see here, you've seen it in the first slide as well, but it's pretty straightforward. It's in a Google Doc. You know, I'm not using any specific software. They are way too expensive in my opinion. No one needs that. There are the dates, the channels we used, and I just put in on what date we publish what. And make sure that till the conference, there was a nice counter to it. So, count on 1, 2, see there was the event, and then we had follow-up 1 and follow-up 2 phase, where we tried to actually establish the organization team as an expert in the area. And I would recommend you that if you don't want to do it day by day because it's a lot of work, you know, it's my job, so I can take the time to actually do it as detailed, put it in for weeks. Just give yourself an idea, what will you tell the audience when, because then you understand on what journey you will take them. That's it. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? Yes?
Are you using something to automate posting on social media? Like, or do you have, can you recommend some tools to automate?
I used Buffer a lot, yeah. For me it was the best. But I mean, I also want to say it becomes more and more difficult to actually do the same postings on different channels. Because there's this one slide where all the social media channels are. They do have different purposes now. That's where we go. So, but in most experiences, if you really go through this intensive journey I introduced to you now with the target persona, really in most examples, it states very clearly that one persona, for example, is on Instagram and the other one is on LinkedIn, and then it becomes very clear what to post where. But the one I liked most was Buffer. Or still like most. Yeah. Anything else? Yeah.
How to reach people who are not in the social medias?
Offline.
Yes.
Yeah. There is not one rule for it, but it really depends on what you would sell. But for example, it can be on markets. It can be on events, it can be on conferences, it can be that you have a brochure and you put it in a doctor's waiting room. You know, you have that, content marketing is a very creative process, so you really have to put yourself in the shoes of the person you want to reach and think, okay, where is this person? Where does she grab it and has the time to actually read it? You might be sitting at the doctor's, you know, I mean, it should fit. But always thinking offline and online. Yeah, many are not on social media, but what I've been talking about here is all based on organic search. So of course, there's a lot of opportunity with paid search, like Google ads and everything, social media ads and stuff. If it's that where you reach them, it's definitely worth trying. But I don't know your experience, but be careful with Google Ads. It's a full-time job, and it's you lose faster money that you win if you're not really full on. So.
How much can a person achieve by not using money as a tool for marketing, but just doing it all by themselves online?
I think a lot. I mean, content marketing is at the moment the most effective marketing tool. The good thing is everyone can do it. Really, everyone. You don't need anything but time, resources, and patience. But content marketing doesn't work from one day after the other. You know, you need patience and you need to give yourself time. I personally, of course, if you do it on your own and you have not a lot of resources, you have to think very carefully, okay, where do I put it in and things like that. Does it make sense that I go offline and I go to conference, I do a lot via networking and these kind of things. But basically there's no rule. If you're patient enough and make time available and use your resources right by knowing what you should do, I think you can achieve a lot.
And in your personal experience, what do you think about posting a post weekly? 1 post, 2 posts, 3 posts? Not to be annoying, as you said. What is the, let's say, some kind of mixture or number of posts?
Again, it really depends on what you're doing. You know, if you're doing a blog or an online magazine, post 3-4 times a week, you know, because you want to entertain people. If you sell a product, if I have to put a generic number on that, I would say 1 is too little, 2, 3 a week. Yeah, but very difficult to answer that.
Yes, I know that.
Yeah. Depends on Facebook. People get annoyed. You know, one of the trends 2019, it says, is to rebuild trust in social media. Why? Because we're all getting really annoyed because we spent the last 10 years on social media. Well, I did. Yeah. So it's a trend is really to rebuild trust. So my tip would be to take it very serious and to use it as a communication channel rather than to really spam it. If you're on Instagram, the younger audience, or they are used to much more, they grew up with it. So on Instagram, I wouldn't be worried about that so much, for example, as on Facebook.
Thank you very much.
Anything else?
For all of you who are shy to ask questions now, you can ask Christina now in the informal part of our gathering. So feel free to get some refreshments and stay for a while longer to hang out with us. Thank you very much, and thank you, Christina.